Welcome, everybody, to the Jim Masters Show live entertainment lifestyle variety talk show series. It's good to have you with us watching from all around the world. We hope you're having a great day today. We have an extraordinary guest who's joining us from the southern New England and Connecticut coast, where it is about 51 degrees and sunny, and it's winter time. We are being blessed with beautiful weather in the Northeast. We welcome you from wherever you're watching. We have an international audience, our lovely viewers who watch the Jim Masters Show live series from all around the world. We welcome everybody in the United States and Canada, throughout North America, our friends watching in Mexico and South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and so much more. We appreciate all of the love and support of our conversational entertainment lifestyle variety talk show series. We started about 900 episodes ago. And thanks for all of the wonderful comments on social media as well, on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at Jim Masters TV. We truly appreciate your love and your support for what we're doing here. So to bringing back the lost art of conversation and style, kind of like Johnny Carson and Dick Cavett, also by bringing all of you in. We're very interactive, so if you would like to comment during the course of the show, you can certainly do that as well. I'm so honored and blessed today to have an extraordinary guest, a true treasure, not only in the culinary world, but also just as an individual. We are so blessed to have the incomparable master chef, Jacques Pépin, with us. He's not only an iconic chef, but he's a revered television personality, decades and decades on PBS. He also does a lot of incredible videos on social media as well, and YouTube and Facebook. He's been doing that recently, and to great fanfare. Also, a prolific writer and author of well over 30 books. And also, he's a culinary educator and instructor and has been doing that for decades as well. And in addition, he is a glorious and brilliant artist as well, and his art is available for sale. We're going to talk about all of that and so much more. I had an opportunity on multiple occasions, actually, through my years of work on PBS and public television, to sit down and interview Jacques Pépin in the studio while phones were ringing off the hook and people were sending in their support for cooking programs, for food and culinary arts programs, and for Jacques Pépin's amazing series, all of the different shows he's done, including series with the beloved Julia Child. And we've got some wonderful memories here showing when we were having a good time in the studio, all the cookbooks there. Matter of fact, I believe he was autographing cookbooks at the time as people were calling in. And I just recall lots of laughs, lots of wonderful moments. I think he's giving me a very special cooking tip there. And we're laughing. The whole studio was laughing all at the same time. And it was just absolutely fantastic. Again, he is a glorious individual when it comes to the culinary world, but just he's also somebody who gives back as a phenomenal teacher and educator. He's had his phenomenal foundation, too, the Jacques Pépin Foundation, started by his daughter and son-in-law. We're going to talk about that because that does extraordinary work. But first, here's just a little bit of his background. We have some wonderful things to show you as we go along here, and we truly are honored again by his presence. He was born in France, near Lyon. He always found the kitchen to be a place of comfort and excitement. He helped his parents in their restaurant, and at age 13 became an apprentice, too, at the Grand Hôtel de L'Europe. He also subsequently worked in Paris, ultimately serving as a personal chef to 3 French heads of state. Yes, 3 French presidents, including Charles de Gaulle. After moving to the United States in 1959, he had worked with Le Pavillon, and that's a wonderful historic French restaurant in New York City, very beloved. From 1960 to 70, he was director of research and new development for Howard Johnson's, and he developed recipes for the restaurant chain. At the same time, he earned his bachelor's and master's degree at Columbia University. Author, again, of well over 30 books, and there's a new book we're going to tell you about as well. He's published his first cookbook, The Other Half of the Egg, with Helen McCulley back in 1967, the same year that his only daughter, Colladine was born. And Jacques released his seminal text, La Technique, in 1976, and his autobiography, The Apprentice, in 2003. He's a former columnist for the New York Times, and his articles have appeared in countless food magazines, especially as well, Food and Wine magazine. He's also the recipient of honorary doctorate degrees from 5 American universities. And he was also awarded France's highest civilian honor in 2004, as well as many, many more accolades through the years. He's received 16 James Beard Foundation Awards, including the Lifetime Achievement Award in 2005. In 2015, he received American Public Television's Lifetime Achievement Award in November. And that was the inaugural Julia Child Award, which was presented to him at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. A longtime close friend of Julia Child, he starred with her in the PBS series called Julia and Jacques Cooking at Home, which won both an Emmy Award and a James Beard Foundation Award in 2001. He also released his cookbook, the 13th companion PBS TV series, Jacques Pépin, Heart and Soul in the Kitchen. The book was published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. The 26-show public television series was It's an extraordinary story. He's an American institution on so many different levels. He's one of the most revered and beloved chefs in the world. And you know what? He's also very approachable and very affable. And he likes to have a good time. He likes to have some simple wine. And I hear through my research, he loves bread and butter. He loves good bread and butter. You assume just all the fancy stuff, right? No, but Jacques loves good bread and butter. We're going to hear about all that and so much more as we welcome him live and direct from his beautiful home along the Connecticut coast. Do join me in welcoming Jacques Pépin to our series.
Hey.
Wow, I tell you, what an honor to have you here.
You should have done all of this.
That's the short list there, huh?
This is Gaston.
Oh, look, yes,
Yeah.
we have.
Hi, Gaston. All right. He wanted to say hello.
Hello. How old is he? And what kind of dog is he?
It's a Rottweiler, and he's 9 years old.
He's 9 years old now.
He's a poodle.
Yeah. Does he help around the kitchen, or does he wait for things to drop off the table and then scoops them up from there?
Oh, no. He's very special to eat. He's very hard to feed. Usually you give food to the dog, they jump on it. I give him food, he extend his nose, smell it, look at me and say, you call yourself a chef?
Oh, boy. How have you been? It's been an interesting time, in the last few years with the pandemic and all. A lot of people have been home and either working from home or just reconnecting with family, but also reconnecting with food and their kitchens. And if they didn't know how to cook before all of it, they've certainly been dipping their feet in to learn how. And it's been a very interesting experience and time in many ways, on many levels, hasn't it, Jacques?
Yes, certainly. I mean, for the last 3 years, we've been quite busy, not only with the foundation, but Claudine, my daughter, decided to ask me to do some little Facebook show of like 3, 4, 5 minutes with what I have left over in the refrigerator, freezer too. So we've done 300 of those with my friend Tom, who come with just the two of us. Tom shoot with a fixed camera and then his handheld camera or telephone. And then I do the dishes and the food. And so the two of us in the kitchen. So it's been fun and very simple type of food and very successful. We had like 300,000 people like a couple of years ago, and we had like 1.8 million people now on Facebook.
That's
So yeah,
incredible. That
it's
is
crazy.
absolutely, yeah. Growing up in beautiful France, you had the exposure to your family with your parents being organic farmers, but they didn't really know back then what organic really was, right? Tell us about those early influences and experiences and inspiration of the family being surrounded by that atmosphere in France.
Yeah, well, the word organic, I don't think existed at the time. We had a little restaurant in the center of Lyon, next to the market, about 8-10 blocks from the market, along the Rhone River, the Saône River, rather. And in the morning, before going to school, my brother and I would go with my mother to help her carry the bag because we didn't have a car at the time. So she would walk the market, which is like a quarter of a mile, and then walk back and buy on the way back, buying a case of mushroom, which was turning black. So they know the guy has to get rid of it, or tomato. Bring it back to the restaurant, start peeling her vegetable for lunch and dinner. She did not have a refrigerator. She had an ice box. So she had a block of ice every day she bought with a couple of chicken, couple of fish, meat, whatever she had to be finished by the end of the day. She always ran out of it. Everything was local, everything was organic, everything. I don't pesticide, insecticide, that type of stuff didn't really existed. So, everything was, as I said, local and local and fresh and organic. So that was the way it was at that time. It was a bit of a different world, but this is the way it was when I was a kid, and that's how I was trained. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an incredible influence. Matter of fact, going back a little bit in time here, we did our research here. I like to do my research, Jacques, and look what we dug up here.
oh boy,
Wow.
I
There
already hold the chicken in my
I
hands.
was there is the revered master chef in the making.
Yeah,
I tell you, that is such a great shot. We
I
also
was a
have
fat
an
little kid. Yeah, there is.
Yes. Tell us about your mother and the
See,
influence
my
of
mother,
your
she made that coat uh, with lamb or whatever, or rabbit or whatever skin that she did. Her handbag, my father made it. He was a cabinet maker, and she covered it. Everything was made at home at the time. Yes,
yeah.
my mother was running the several restaurants. She was a very in my family in France. I count like 12 different restaurants, all of those run by women. I was the first male to go into that business. My aunt, my cousin, my sister-in-law, my, and so forth, mother, all run little restaurant there. In fact, when I was, at some point, as you mentioned, I was the chef to the president in France. When I
Yeah.
go back to my house in Lyon or near Lyon, in vacation, go to my aunt who had a little restaurant, go into the kitchen to help herself. She always throw me out. She said, "You use too much butter, get out of here." So no one was impressed. I was the chef of the president, but they throw me out.
That's amazing. An apprentice at the age of 13 is quite extraordinary. When that opportunity came along, chef, what was that experience like for you?
Well, it wasn't unusual at the time. That was in France. We had to go to school until the end of primary school, which was 14 years old usually. But I was in that class when I was like 12 and a half, 14. So when I finished at 13, I took the entrance, the final examination, and I left. At that time, you have to realize that we didn't have the telephone. We didn't have, of course, television, radio. We didn't have a radio or the telephone or even magazine and so forth. So life was quite simpler than now, if you want. My father was a cabinet maker by trade. My mother was a cook by trade. So I was going to be a cabinet maker or a cook. It was one or
Right.
the other. So the choice was pretty simple. And I loved the kitchen too. So I finished, school and I entered apprenticeship. That was kind of standard at the time.
Yes, and then drafted at the age of 20. Then that changed things a little bit for you too, huh?
Yes, well, it was during the war in Algeria, and at that time, at that time, it was mandatory service. My brother on the right there was already drafted. He was in the Air Force, and I was drafted in the Navy. And actually, I was supposed to be sent to Algeria also to fight, but my brother was there, so that saved me. They didn't send two drafted at the same family at the same time. One had to come back before the other one go. So that's why I was sent back to Paris and eventually worked for the mess of the admiral, and eventually I worked for the president. Yes.
We have another great photo we wanted to show. Just so many wonderful photos here.
Yeah, that's my father when he went into the resistance. Yes. So
what was he like?
Well, he was like Zorba the Greek,
Yeah.
He drank a lot of wine and started dancing on the table. He was a happy man.
Yeah, very, very happy, which is a beautiful thing. Here's another great photo we have. Look at this.
Well, where did you get all of those pictures?
I tell you, huh?
Yeah. We were three boys, yes. So, yeah, that's it. That house here, it was a little apartment house. We had an apartment on the side too, and it was bombed 3 times during the war.
Was it really?
3 times I was we had an organic a garden, a communal garden. I was going with my grandmother, with the 3 of us actually, and 3 times we were bombed, and 3 times the side of the house was destroyed, and 3 times we were at the garden, not there.
Boy.
So
yeah,
that was crazy because my father, as I say, was in the resistance, so he would sneak into town to bring some sardine or whatever he could get. And of course, there was no telephone, so he had no way of knowing. So he would get to the house, and the house is destroyed. So he would find out that some cousin or whatever. And then again, a second and a third time. So, yeah, that was hard for him.
Extraordinary, yeah. Here's another great of the family.
Yeah, it was a little restaurant one of the little restaurants my mother had in France. And I have my 3 brothers and me here. My mother is in the back. My father is not on that picture. My aunt and cousin here.
Lots of wonderful memories too, Family, there's nothing like family.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's when I went into apprenticeship. I was really tough. You can see that.
What would Jacques say, the Jacques of today, say to that young man there?
Well, I think he did pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, at my age, I did kill a fair amount of chicken and rabbit and eviscerated chicken and scaled fish and skinned rabbit, and that was our world, So
yeah.
I learned how to do that by repeat and repeat and repeat. At that time, the idea was to conform in the kitchen. You didn't come in the kitchen to create anything. You came there, the chef tell you do that. And if you had said why, you would have said, because I just told you. That's what about the end of the explanation.
Yes.
There I was 17 years old here, and I ended up being the chef in that little restaurant there. And here I'm preparing a banquet for the firemen. So that was the yearly banquet for the firemen. So that was my first exposure to fame, because they put that picture in the newspaper to look at the newspaper.
That's incredible. Do you remember what you were preparing for the banquet?
Yeah, I was doing those were color, which is a kind of bass poached with decoration and mayonnaise and so forth. So,
very nice. Look at this shot here.
Yeah, that was in the Champs-Élysées in Paris that time when I worked. I worked all of the 50s. I mean, 7 years in Paris. So look at that.
That's a good. Yeah, that's an iconic shot. So is this one. Yeah, we're sprinkling in some memories here. Yeah.
This is the chef. I am on the left. On the right, the chef from the White House in the middle, René Verdun, and Pierre Franet on the other side, Roger Fessaguet, Jean Verne. Those are all pretty famous French chefs at the time. And this was at the house of Craig Claiborne, who was the food critic of the New York Times.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what at his house in East Hampton there. So I think we just came back from the pool there or something.
Very nice. Look at this shot.
Yes, also there. I was carving a melon at Craig also for some type of banquet that we did. So, yeah.
Really terrific. Love these photos we have dug up here.
Oh, yes. I don't know where you get all of that stuff.
Yes, yes. Takes a village, that's for sure, chef.
Yeah.
You look so happy and content there, you know, and
Yeah.
you're in your sweet spot. Here's another
Yeah.
great shot. Look at
Yeah.
this one.
That was in East Hampton. It was on Gardiner's Island there. The 16th Lord of the Manor, Mr. Gardner, invited us, and we have all of the same chefs. We pick up old driftwood and create a buffet, and we had a great meal with champagne and
Whoa.
crisp baccarat and so forth. I mean, really fancy stuff done with the driftwood and the food of the island, you know.
Mm, yes, really fantastic. Look at this shot.
This was Helen McCullough. She was the food editor of McCall, House Beautiful, and she kind of became my surrogate mother. You know, she was
Ye
never married or anything. She would tell, don't wear this, wear that, don't do this, do
Yeah,
that. And I
right.
started writing because of her. I started writing in House Beautiful too, and went back to school, as you mentioned, because I left school very early. So I did many things in America that I probably would never have done in France. Because
Yeah.
I only came to America for a year. I said I'll come for a year or two and learn the language and go back. Because unlike most people who come as immigrants, they come for economic reason to get a better life, or political reason, or racial reason, or religious reason. I didn't really have any of those. I just came here because I wanted to come to America. America was the golden fleece, you know, so I wanted
Yes.
to come and spend a year or two. And that's not over 60 years ago. So, I mean,
Yeah, you decided to come to America back in 1959, right?
right. That's it, yes.
Tell us about that. You know, you had a nice, established career and experience that was, built and crafted and coiffed in France. What was
Yeah.
it about, the American experience that you wanted to taste?
Well, I didn't know. I knew I wanted, well, jazz from from the war. And I remember the jazz from Louis Armstrong to Ella Fitzgerald and so forth, which I love. So I wanted to come, yes, to America. And I was so well received, I guess. People at that time were very, very welcoming. And they said, oh my God, you come from such a beautiful country too. And so I started going to Colombia. I started doing many things that I would never have done in France. And and I loved it, and that was it. You know, I stayed there, and certainly changed my life. You know? And
Yeah.
at that time, the food world was very, very small. You know, so I was here less than 6 months, and I knew Helen McCullough through Craig Claiborne, who just started at the New York Times. So he did a piece on the Pavillon, and so I became friends with him. So he introduced me to Helen. Helen, of course, introduced me to James Beard because she spoke with him for an hour every day. And then she introduced me to Julia Child, who at that time had never done any show and had never done any book. And so the trinity of cooking, if you want, which is James Beard, Julia Child, and Craig Lemon, I knew them less than 6 months after I was here. So you can see how small the food world was compared to now.
Absolutely, and you had developed back then, like you say, mentioning, meeting Julia Child,
Yeah.
back in 1960, an iconic and very long friendship together, huh?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we drank a lot of wine together.
Yeah.
We argue a lot too.
Yeah.
We had a good time. Yes.
Yes, and it's really a beautiful thing because so many things came out of that, including the PBS series and specials and so much more. What was it like working with, Julia?
See, what happened is that I did 13 series of 26 shows for PBS, so that's hundreds of shows.
Yes.
But I wanted to show the first 2 or 3 or 4 series that I did with KQED, the PBS station in San Francisco. We had to do it on time. So the show of 30 minutes, well, 29 minutes. I have 4 recipes. Someone would go back with a sign, 15 minutes, 7 minutes, 3 minutes, wrap up. So it could be a bit stressing. So I did, after that, a series with my daughter, Claudine, And I say, I cannot really do it on time because I'm showing her how to roll a dough. And if I see a sign 5 minutes, I'm pushing the kid over. So they say, all right, but, be careful not to. We started the show with Julia. First, we had no recipe. At the beginning of the show, Julia said, why don't you write down 100 things that you want to do, and I'll do the same. So we did that, and I think 2 or 3 of mine made it. The rest was Julia. So we first, so no recipe. So it was harder for the cameraman because they didn't know whether we were going right, left, because so we decided the day before, let's do stew or one thing or another. So no recipe. We had a lot of wine. And then Julia said, okay, we're going to cook. And when it's over, we'll tell you. Some of the show were over 70, 80 minutes. I wish we could find the B-roll of those shows.
Right.
Because it was a lot of fun. So, we had no time frame. We had no recipe. So why did I put scallion in that recipe? Because they happened to be on the table. I threw them in. And a lot of wine. So this was a great show. We had a lot of fun.
Yes, and again, the two of you playing off each other with the humor and her doing it this way, doing it this way, really, really interesting. And there are a couple of times I think I had heard you tell a story where Land O'Lakes was a sponsor of,
Right.
and she had wanted to use Crisco instead for the particular.
Yeah, well, as I say, we had no recipe. So that time, I think the president of Land O'Lakes, we taped that in Julia's house in Cambridge. So he came to be in the living room where you could see the camera. And so the producer, of course, told me, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm starting with doing an apple tart, so I'm going to do a dough too. And that was 10, 15 minutes before we start. And Julia said, well, I want to do my own dough after. I said, great, fine, terrific. So I did my dough. Julia helped me. We put it into the oven. And I said, well, now Julia is going to do another. We're going to show you how to make another dough. And she said, yes, Jacques is going to do it. I said, I am? Okay. So she said, yes, I want you to use the food processor. I said, that's a good idea. So I said, what do you want? 2 cups of flour? She said, 2 cups of flour, a dash of salt, a dash of sugar. I said, how much butter? She said, I want Crisco. I said, what do you mean you want Crisco? We don't have any Crisco. She said, we have Crisco. She had a can of Crisco underneath. So we did it half butter, half Crisco. I used to tell her, we don't have to cow to the sponsor, but you don't have to antagonize the people either. Because she did the same thing with the Candle Jackson, with the other sponsor. And we had hundreds of bottles of wine, and we drank a lot of wine. And the day where Jeff Jackson, the owner, came to see one of the show, he wanted to take us out for dinner, which we did. And so I don't know what we did. I think we did a stew. And at the end, I said, you want a bit of a Merlot or a Cab with that? She said, I want beer. So again, she had beer under the table, hidden. And because that was the president of Candle Jackson.
Yes.
Yeah, this way.
Right under the table there. But so many hours of content, and you've had this extraordinary relationship with PBS over the years, with public television,
Yes.
and all of the great shows and so much more. What's that experience been like for you? I mean, we're talking like 40 years or so, huh?
Yes, 4 years with PBS. PBS has been, my second home, certainly in San Francisco too. And I was never involved in raising money. I was never like the executive producer too. So they say, okay, we have the money, let's do another series. I say, great. And we did one series after another like this during the 80s and 90s until 5, 6 years ago, I think the last series that I did. So it was a great experience because I had a great team here in the back and people working for me. It was very pleasant. We drank wine, we share food, and this is a nice way to live. I mean, to be a cook, it's a difficult professionally. It's a difficult thing to do, and you don't really make much money. But if you love what you're doing, then you make a lot of people happy and in our time of political polarization. There's nothing you can talk about except food. You can talk about food or wine or
Yes,
being together. Yes.
absolutely. And I know that for you, I think I heard you once say too that the dish will usually always come out better if it's done with love. That's
Of
very
course.
important in the
Yeah.
kitchen to have and express love, isn't it,
Yeah.
Jacques?
Yeah, you cannot cook indifferently. You have to put yourself in the food, and that's why I've seen people doing a whole show without ever testing once. And at the end, they test. They say, "Well, it's not that." I mean, with Julia, every 5 minutes, test it, test it. So I would test, and I said, "It needs salt." Of course, she tests. She said, "No, there's not enough salt." And the next time I said, I would test again. I said, "I think it's fine." She would test. She said, "Needs salt," and she would put salt. So we had those things. But yes, you build the food, you start working with it, you test, you adjust, you test, you adjust. This is that process, that you do. Yes.
Absolutely. I mentioned as well, yeah, which you touched upon a little bit, the opportunity to cook for three heads of state in France,
Yes.
including President Charles de Gaulle. What was that experience like? That had to be incredible.
Well, someone introduced me a few weeks ago and he said that man was chef to three presidents. They're all dead. I was introduced. Okay. Well, at that time, you see, what happened is that the cook was really at the bottom of the social scale. And for example, when I was with de Gaulle, I served Eisenhower at the time, Tito, Macmillan were the head of state. But you would never be called to the dining room for kudo. That did not exist. The cook was in the kitchen in that black corner. That's it. I never had once an interview in France where television barely existed, but I never had one interview with radio or a magazine or newspaper. That did not exist. The cook, as I say, was really at the bottom of the social scale. And any good mother would have wanted her child to marry a lawyer, a doctor, certainly not a cook. And that's one of the reasons that when I came to America in 1959, in 1960, I was offered the job at the White House for Kennedy, but I did not really, frankly, realize the potential because I had done that and it wasn't really a big deal. So instead of going to the White House, I went to Howard Johnson. So it was quite different. But on the other hand, when I left Howard Johnson after 10 years, I opened a restaurant on Fifth Avenue in New York called Apprenticeship, which was mass production of soup and all that, very simple, good bread. Then I opened the World Trade Center with Joe Baum. I set up the commissary there. It feeds 30,000 people a day. I was a consultant at the Russian Tea Room. I'm saying that those things because I would never have been able to do any of those jobs without the training of Howard Johnson. So it was a
Right.
very positive experience. As a French chef, I didn't know about production, marketing, chemistry of
Right.
food, and so forth.
Because at that time there was this invitation and option to cook for the White House,
Right,
right?
right.
And you weighed the options, the White House or Howard Johnson's. But at that time, the cooks, the chefs were not necessarily in the forefront or as revered and celebrated
No.
as they are today, right?
Yeah, because I didn't go, so it was a friend of mine, René Verdon, who actually was the sous chef at the Essex House in New York. He called and I called him to he talked to them and he finally got the job. And I remember like a year later, he sent me a picture of him with President Kennedy and Mrs. Kennedy that never existed before. So it was the early 60s. It was changing, women liberation, organic gardening, and that type of thing was changing because prior to this, I have asked who was the chef at the White House, and apparently it was a black lady from the South. Well, she would have been totally unknown, just as I was or anyone else. There was no glory to that. So, yeah, it changed at that point.
When you came to America as well, sort of the way things were done was a little bit different, right? It was a whole new experience, the way we were doing things then, and some of the education and some of the technology and techniques that have developed over the years, right?
Yeah, it was quite different. Yes, and everything was different. I mean, I live on First Avenue, on 50th between First and Second Avenue, right in Midtown Manhattan. There was my first supermarket next door. I never been in a supermarket. And I thought it was a great idea not to have to go to the fish guide, vegetable guide, meat guide. Everything was under the roof, except there was that package. And there was only one salad. It was iceberg. There was no leek, no shallot, no oriental vegetable, no good olive oil. It was another world. There was great beef, there was great lobster, there was that type of thing. But the supermarket now have nothing to do with the supermarket who were there 60 years ago.
Yes, the supermarkets have definitely come a long way in a positive way, haven't they?
Sure, I mean, at that point, there was no great wine in America. There was no great bread. There was no great cheese. And now we get terrific cheese, great bread, great wine from different part of the country. It's quite different.
Also too, I mentioned 45 years plus Boston University teaching. I know it's a very hard question to answer, Chef, but do you love cooking or teaching more, or are they equal for you?
Well, that's a good point. You see, for 10 years, I wrote for the New York Times. Then I did television. Then I did consulting work to open restaurant. Then I do teaching in cooking school. All of this is great because it's all different. It's all cooking, and it makes my life different. If I had to be 24 hours only doing television type of thing, I would get crazy. And even when I was at the New York Times, after 10 years, I had enough. If I had to do that every week, it's the same thing. But there, I had the variety of doing all of those things which have to do with food, and to do a consulting work to open a restaurant is quite different than giving a class or setting up a recipe. So that's the beauty of what I did, I guess, food in different area. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How I always wondered, how were you able to balance it all? Of course, you have the family, but also the television shows, the cookbooks, the teaching. Uh, were you able to sort of pace yourself? Like you say, you love the fact that you can dip into all these different areas. So that way there it becomes a challenge and it's not rote and boring and just routine. But how have you been able to find the balance in home and hearth with the career and everything that you've done and continue to do?
Well, it was not difficult at all. I mean, it just fall into those things by itself, And I say I met Helen McCullough, so I started writing a little bit, and I moved then to Howard Johnson, which was another world, learn other type of things and so forth. And tell you the truth, also I had a very, very bad car accident in the mid-70s, and I had like 12 fractures. So I could not, I thought that I would never be able to walk again. And that kind of pushed me also out of the kitchen to a certain extent, out of the professional kitchen, that is, to do more in terms of writing or book too. So, life is made of those things, which happen to you, or decisions that you take. It pushes you in one direction, another direction. In the early 70s, before I did television, I started giving classes, and it was the time when you have a little cookware shop with a little cooking school open all over the country. That was new. And though I was asked to do a couple of classes here, and they said, oh, wow, great, can we book you for next year? So I ended up doing like 40 weeks out of the year on the road doing cooking school from San Francisco to Maine to all over to Oregon, to all over the country. So that was what I did at the time. And then television started. In fact, I was giving classes for Martin Yan, at a cooking school near San Francisco, near Palo Alto there. And so I was giving classes there. And he told me, oh, I have to do a show for KQED. They want me. Can you come and do it with me? I said, sure. So I went to do it with him. And then the producer there told me, would you be interested in doing a series with us? I said, yes, sure. So, and that's how it started. So then television started at that point, and one show led to another, and so forth. So life is this way. You react to certain type of things, and it projects you in different direction.
You really you have such a passion, and you're so wonderful at being able to break things down in a way that's almost in layman's terms for all of us, which I think is a beautiful way that you present everything. You really love to show us how to take the ingredients and have fun with the art of cooking, right? That's something that is
Yeah.
absolutely near and dear to who you are.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that because it's quite different. The way, I did, maybe the best book that I did was called The Art of Cooking, and it's 2 large volume. We did 34,000 picture in 5 years of this, and we kept 2 volume, 1,500 picture each, from boning out a whole baby lamb to doing many, many things like this. At that time, it was the mid-'80s. I was cooking differently than I cook now. Now I look at the show that I did for the Facebook that I'm talking about. It's so much simpler and different. What happens as you get older, your metabolism changes. You eat in a different way. When you're a young chef, you tend to add to the plate, to add more decoration, adding. And now at my age, you tend to eliminate from the plate to be left with something more essential without too much embellishment around. So if I have a great tomato out of the garden at the right temperature, have a little bit of coarse salt and olive oil on top. I don't need more embellishment than that. So again, that's part of your life too. As you progress, your metabolism change, you change. And the book that I did, the book of technique, I did that. It's over 50 years now. I think it came out in 75, something like that. And I don't cook the same way that I cook 50 years ago for that technique. But here, the way you do the technique, the way you peel an asparagus, the way you poach an egg, the way you sharpen a knife, the way you separate eggs is the same thing than 50 years ago. So even though I won't do the recipe at all the same way, that book is still in print and selling because those techniques have never really changed, So that's different.
Yes. That is so iconic too, and on the coffee tables of many, many homes, that book, and so many of your incredible books as well. Fast Food My Way is one of them, and
Yeah, so yeah,
Quick and Simple, and
that's
yeah.
a good point too. I wanted to show Fast Food My Way, how to cook as we do in a restaurant. But in a restaurant, what happens is that you have the prep cook. So the prep cook is going to scale the fish, is going to do the fillet, is going to slice the mushroom, is going to wash the spinach, is going to chop the shallots. You have all of that ready in front of you. So I am there, someone order a fish. I grab the fish in there, a bit of shallot, a bit of mushroom on top, dash of wine, boil it for a minute and a half, finish it with a piece of butter. So I did that recipe in 4, 5, 6 minutes because I have all that prep. So in Fast Food My Way, I wanted to do the same idea. So I went to the market to buy boneless, skinless breast of chicken, pre-washed spinach, pre-sliced mushroom, whatever I find at the supermarket, using the supermarket as a prep cook. So I have those packages on the table. I didn't even open the package at the beginning of some of the show. I could open it and do 3, 4 dishes in 29 minutes because I bought that type of food, which is all kind of prep, like you would do in a restaurant. Another way of showing them how to cook.
Yes. Quick and simple too, as well,
Yeah.
taking the ingredients and doing it in a quick and
Right.
simple way. Another fantastic one. This too, of course, near and dear to your heart. The Apprentice, national bestseller. Tell us about the inspiration for penning this brilliant book.
It was interesting because I started doing essays, an essay on my mother's cooking, an essay on nouvelle cuisine, an essay on my apprenticeship. So I had about 200-300 pages of small 6-8 page essays. And I spoke with Judy Jones at Knopf at some point, and I said, are you interested in doing that book? And they said, yes. They were, and during that time, someone else contacted me, and they said, oh, no, we want to do that book. But we changed it at that point. They said, the book is great, but instead of doing it, as they said, let's try to link those things together to do more of a biography or a cook's memoir. So what happened when you finish your apprenticeship? You jump here, you jump there. So we fill up the gap in between, put those essays together to do, yes, a kind of cook's memoir. And that came out in, I think, 2002, I think, or 2000, whatever, something like that.
Here's somebody that everybody knows from the shows, but of course, your lovely daughter, Claudine.
Yeah.
Tell us about her involvement with so many different things on so many different levels, and of course your granddaughter as well.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to be surrounded by family on so many different levels in this case, huh?
For sure. I mean, as I say, I've been teaching at BU for 35 years, 37.
Yeah.
So Claudine went to BU. At some point, when I moved to Connecticut, they asked me, I did a thing, I was doing a PhD at Columbia at the time on food. And anyway, so I gave a class at Wesleyan University here, and someone audited the class for BU, and they said, we're opening that program. Are you interested? I said, sure. So I went there and I did it for a couple of years. And then Claudine was she was in middle school, high school. And so I said, am I going to stay there? And I said, if I'm a professor here, does my daughter go for free? She said, yes. I said, okay, I'm staying. So Claudine went to BU, and my son-in-law ended up teaching at BU as well. And now my granddaughter started at BU. That's her first term at BU. Now she's 18 years old, So that's a whole history of that we have with BU. But it's been very gratifying for me. I will be teaching there in April, actually. So I still go there.
And of course, everybody knows them from being on the television series as well. And with your granddaughter, a grandfather's lessons in the kitchen
Yeah.
with Shori. Tell us about this.
Yeah, we did a great fun show here, and we taped it to do some video, but the video are not very good, so they were never really used. But I show her how to do all kind of funny thing, like a curly dog, for example, that I was doing at Howard Johnson, where I take a hot dog and I cut it halfway through the long way and across, so that when you put it into the skillet, it curl up into a round thing, all curl up. I put it onto a bun like that. So curly dog, or very simple tomato, how to make meringue, or how to mix Rice Krispie or cornflake with melted chocolate to do some type of cookie like that she did. So it was fun cooking with with your granddaughter and showing her how to do easy things, fun things, because in our family, food is a common language. And when Claudine was a couple of years old, my daughter, I hold her in my arm and she stirred the pot, and make her stir the pot so she would eat it because she made it, quote, to the father.
Yes.
So likewise with my granddaughter, when she was 4 years old, I had a stool next to me at the stove, and I said, okay, give me the salad. You think it's clean? She should wash that salad. Let's go to the garden. Let's get parsley. So I said, no, that's chive. Test it. No, that's parsley. No, that's chive. That tarragon, and so forth. So she come back. I take her to the market, and I said, okay, let's get me some pear. Make sure they are ripe. Did you smell those pears? You think they are ripe? Those tomatoes are ripe. So we talk about the food. She touched the food. We come back. She helped me. And then we sit down and eat at the table and continue the conversation. So this is a background for us, to have discussion and to talk. So it was always very important.
People probably ask you all the time, what is your favorite meal? What is your favorite thing to enjoy? Comfort foods, fancy foods. But you love really good, and this may surprise folks, bread and butter. You're good with a nice bread and butter, right?
If you have a fantastic baguette, crispy, and you have great butter. And again, that's another thing. When I came to America, butter, but now from Vermont, from all over the country, and you can get butter from Ireland or from France or from Normandy, from all over the world. But we have great butter. But yes, it's very hard to beat bread and butter when they are the top quality. Yes.
Yeah, we have some other wonderful books here too that you've penned over the years, and
Right.
again, these are all available, folks. If you want to get them, they're all available. Jacques Pépin. This is you're celebrating as well the most cherished recipes over the years. This one, menus, a book for your
this is a different book. It's not, there is no recipe in there. It's a book of drawing.
Yes.
For people to do their menu. I was married for 54 years, and from the beginning, we decided when people came to the house, I take a big empty book, and we wrote the menu, whoever was there, and on the other page they sign and say funny things, and sometimes if we have great wine, we put the label of the wine in it, sometimes the music. So I have 12 books that thick, over 50 years of, my mother in there, my two brothers, many friends, which are in those books. It's a whole memory, In fact, Claudine, she did her mid-50 now, and she came a few months back and said, "What did I eat for my fourth birthday?" I said, "Let's look." And we find our first birthday. She wrote, she drew some little chicken, whatever. So those are all memories. So I did that book. That book is 80 drawing that I did for people to write their menu in the drawing, and then for people to, the guests to sign on the other page. Or if you go to a great restaurant, you can take it with you and write the menu there, ask the chef to sign it. It's a question of memory, the memory of great meals. So.
That's a whole thing as well. You are a prolific and brilliant artist. Is that something you were always doing as a kid, or did that develop as time went on? Your art is absolutely extraordinary, chef. And and people, if they want to really get a chance to look at it, you can go to this site here, and it's all there, and it's incredible. Very, very beautiful pieces of work. What inspires you to create the art?
Well, one of the things was those menus to start with. And I realized when I was illustrating those menus, I was doing a lot of chicken. So I ended up doing, but I was at Columbia and I took a couple of classes when I was at Columbia, one in sculpture and one in drawing. And I have drawing here from the 61, 62, 3. So a long time. So I have been painting. I probably paint more now. I'm more retired than I used to, but I've always done it for the last over half a century.
And I encourage people to go to the website to check it all out, because it really is, it's breathtaking work. There's a new book too that is something quite special that we want to show everybody. The Art of Chicken. Tell us about that. And I love this shot here.
Yeah, right. Yes, a friend of mine from Jamaica here, Natalia. That's where I get my egg and stuff. And so I went there, and yes, I wanted actually to do a book of drawing and painting of chicken. I have 100 painting and drawing in that book, and I didn't want to do another book of recipe. I have, as you said, 30 book of recipe. But when I started doing, sending the picture and so forth, they said, "Okay, can we have recipe with that?" I said, "No, I don't want to do recipe." So finally, we decided that I would tell them story, just like I did in The Apprentice, which is the cook story. I'm telling you story here about eggs and about chicken from Africa, from Russia, from China, where I was, France or Italy, and so forth. Story about chicken, story about eggs. So the recipe are kind of narrative in a sense. I'm explaining my mother used to do this, that, this, and so forth. So those recipes, some of them are probably feasible. Some of them are not really feasible. When I say, okay, we used to use cock's comb and unborn eggs of the chicken, we used to do that, and so forth in all recipe. So it's more story about chicken, story about eggs, and narrative recipe. So it was fun to do with all of the panning, so.
That's incredible. Are you working on yet another book?
Yeah, I have one coming out at the end of the year.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary. Another thing that's extraordinary, as I mentioned in the introduction, Chef, is your desire to give back. I mean, with all of this that you've given us, these wonderful recipes, the beautiful art, the fabulous television series, all these cookbooks, educating everybody in the college, university level, and then there's the foundation, which is something near and dear to your heart, that was created by your daughter and son-in-law,
Yes.
which is something very, very special. and gives back to the community in such a big, bold way. Tell us about the Jacques Pépin Foundation.
Yeah, I have been very, very lucky. I would never have done an outside like you if it hadn't been for Tom Hopkins, my friend here, who has been doing book with me 35 years with a photographer, video. So he created the outside. And I'm very happy. My son-in-law and Claudine decided to do Facebook. My son-in-law decided to do the foundation too. My son-in-law is a professional cook, he's a professional chef for years and years. And he teaches at Johnson and Wales now. He went back to school, got his PhD, eventually teach there. And at some point he told me, you've taught all your life, giving classes here, there. Who do you think you'd like to teach now? And I say, maybe people who have been disenfranchised by life, like people who come out of jail, people, homeless people, former drug addict, people like this. It's not necessarily young people, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, because we can take someone. I have, and you mentioned over 30 books and 100 of video shows that I've done. So we can teach people signing book and video and so forth, how to do some basic things in like 6 weeks. Could teach people how to peel asparagus and peel onion and wash salad and do that, so that you have a place in the kitchen already. And if you like it and continue, maybe 5 years later, you're the chef there, and kind of redo your life. So we've done that. We're doing that through community kitchen. There is community kitchen throughout the country, from Hartford here to San Francisco, from New York to LA. We're doing work with community kitchen to teach people there, to grant them prize, to show them some basic technique of cooking. I think that was in New York. Yeah, it's been pretty rewarding, to see that. And as I said, in our time of polarization, cooking bring people together. Our motto is that everyone looks the same in the eye of the stove. So, and it's true. Yeah.
I think I've heard you say that, and I think that is absolutely a beautiful thing to say. When I heard that, that like stopped me. I'm like, my God, that is so Jacques to think of it that way. It truly is. And the other thing I've heard you say is one of the things that you love about America is the fact that we have the exposure to all of these different cultures and cuisines. And, when you go back home in France, beautiful restaurants, wonderful food, fabulous country and culture, but most of the folks eat the French cooking that they grew up with. We tend to gravitate to the things that we are familiar with from our childhood and the early exposure. But here in America, you can have Turkish and Portuguese and Spanish and Italian and German, and you can have all that in the same day, right?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in France, you have a lot of Chinese, Japanese restaurants and so forth. And so in Italy and so in Spain, but basically 99% of Italian eat Italian. So same thing with the French or the Spanish, because the cooking is so strong. But in America, when you consider that there were 24,000 restaurants in New York City, the amount of ethnicity is unmatched anywhere in the world, so you can have any type of food. And that has changed a great deal too. When I came to America, there were the great restaurants were always continental restaurant, kind of French with misspelled menu or whatever. Right. There was no great Italian, Japanese, Chinese restaurant. There were a lot of them, Chinatown, but not on the level of class. Every classy restaurant. Now it's so different. You have extraordinary Italian restaurant, Japanese, Chinese, and all that, as well as the French. So that has changed a great deal too. And the palate of American people traveling in Europe, going there, traveling to wine country, and the knowledge of people is much, much better than it used to be. So it's very, very different. And for me, that's an interesting thing, because I am often considered as maybe the quintessential French chef. And then you open my book and you have a page 32, and then you have a black bean soup with banana and cilantro on top. My wife being born in New York, but her father was Cuban, So and then you'll have a southern fried chicken, and you'll have a lobster roll from Connecticut, whatever. So I'm probably the quintessential American chef now after all those years, because I do all of those.
Yeah, there's a video you did not that long ago because you do the Facebook and the YouTube as well, and it's this. I have Irish in me. I'm English, Irish, Swedish, and French. English, Irish on dad's side, and English, Swedish, and French on my mother's side. And you have this video, which is a mashed potato casserole. And the Irish part of me said, "Oh my God, that's heaven." Anything I say, if God came down and said, Jim, we're going to send you on an island and you'll only have one thing to eat for the rest of your life, probably it would be mashed potatoes,
Oh, yeah.
comfort food, just that, like you would be the bread and butter.
And eggs. I would have eggs.
The eggs, yes. You have shown people how to do it in such an extraordinary way. One thing that you said that also has hit me in a very deep way is going back to, the things that we knew in childhood, and how important the kitchen really is in our lives, and the parents, the family, the smells, the sounds. So when people are off, in the military, or they're off at college, wherever they are, and then they come back home, whether it's for the holidays, visits, whatever the situation may be, and they congregate in the kitchen, it brings it all back, right? The kitchen is a central, going back to childhood, place, an important place in our lives.
Yes, but it's so bad some people are not exposed to that, because when you come back to school, from school, you go in the kitchen to do your homework, and the smell of that kitchen, the voice of your father, your mother, and so forth, those are very visceral tastes that stay with you the rest of your life. And as you mentioned, if you are a soldier somewhere in the, in Vietnam, when they were Vietnam or whatever, and you dream out at night, you dream of your mother, clam chowder, or your father, southern fried chicken. And at that point, the food itself transcends the level of nourishment. The physiological function of food, it transcends that. It becomes home, it becomes security, it becomes love. So food transcends that and get you to something else, and that's what you dream at night. Say yes, the food of childhood is very, very important.
It really is on so many different levels. And as you mentioned, family is as well, right?
Yeah,
Having loving family
right.
around, and you've been blessed with family that's been so supportive. And, when you're a public figure and you're being called upon to go here, there, and everywhere, when you come back home to, in this case, the Connecticut coast, to have loving family there is so, it just settles it all, balances. It's the reason for everything, isn't it?
It's true, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's your wonderful family there. We have a few more photos I just wanted to sprinkle in. There's
Yeah,
Gloria, right?
yeah.
Now
In the
you,
window of the Volkswagen, the first Volkswagen that we had.
yeah, the Volkswagen, yes. And you guys met through skiing, right?
Yes, in the Catskill at Hunter Mountain. Yes, it's another thing that I'd never done in France. I came here, and we're a whole bunch of friends. We started going there and renting a house in Woodstock, which was a kind of community artist too in summer. And then we rented at Hunter Mountain during the winter and all start skiing. And within a couple of years, and I went into the ski school. So I stayed at the ski instructor for a weekend for like 11 years. And then my wife was actually in the ski patrol there, but she did say that. She took classes with me. She took a private class, and I'm banging on her legs and banging on knees too. She ski better than me anyway. In the ski patrol.
I remember seeing her say that in an interview. Yes, and I had mentioned too that I had met her. It's way back. There was a new Peruvian restaurant that had opened up. It was short lived, but the gentleman was so passionate about what he was doing. And he came from Peru and then New York, and then he opened up a restaurant in the Connecticut coast. I believe it was sort of in the New Haven, East Haven town line, maybe North Bradford. And you guys were there, and boy, he was bringing all the different wines for you to try, and the table was filled with all these foods. And he came over to me because I was there because he was a client on an iHeart radio show I was doing, and he was whispering, Jacques Pépin's over there. Jacques Pépin's with his wife, and oh my God, he's loving my food. Oh my! And the gentleman was so excited because you were so gracious, you and your wife, to him. He couldn't believe.
People are very, very generous in our business. They are very generous. They give you to.
Yeah.
So it's always amazing, to be with people who give you. I mean, food is probably maybe the purest act of love, because you feed your grandmother or your kid or your lover or your grandchild, so there is no difference. So food is purest expression of love.
If you have the food, you have the wine, and you have some soft music in the background, you've pretty much got it. You've got it made, right?
Yeah, right.
You've got it made. A few more photos that we were sent.
That's our wedding.
Isn't that
in East Hampton again? At Craig
that
Lebon
was
at the New York Times. He did our wedding outside. Yeah.
That's a beautiful shot. We're so happy to be able to show some of these here.
Where you get and here sitting at the table, this is Mr. Johnson, Howard D. Johnson.
Howard Johnson,
the owner who created Mr. Johnson, and his wife next to it. And I'm in the back with my new wife and Craig Lebon. Yeah.
That's a great photo. Here's another one.
That's Helen Macaulay and James Beard. Yeah. Claudine, yeah, giving classes, whatever.
Oh boy.
Well, this is I don't know, somewhere I was judging a competition of cooking, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, this is with we're going to do a show on the health and food. It was I forget her name. She was pretty famous. Lady.
There you are in your happy place, huh?
The garden, yeah, right.
Yes.
And that Craig Lebon, yes.
Another great one.
Yeah.
These are iconic photos.
That's when we were doing La Technique, yes, right. My house.
It's incredible. And now with technology,
this is La Potagerie, the restaurant I opened in New York, yes.
Now with technology, you can do all these things out of your house there with Julia Child, and
so it's amazing, So
Denny Kay.
Denny Kay, yes. Well, he was a good friend, and he was a great cook, and if you go to his house, if you talk about anything else but cooking, you will never be invited again. Yeah, that HOB with a great cook too, but a pretty famous artist. He has painting in most museums and so forth. That's Claudine and Jane.
You got there. You had an event.
I've never seen a collection of painting like that. That's my friend Jean-Claude. Jean-Claude and I go back. We're cooking together for the French president in France. And then I moved to America, and he followed me, and he got married. I got married, and he had several stores in New York and me. So our life together has been a long friendship. Yeah.
And here you are saying something very funny at the studio, and we're doing the public television pledge drive together. And believe it or not, this is, I believe, late 90s. And what's really fantastic, Jacques, is you and I still look the same today.
Oh yeah, sure, exactly.
That's it. Yeah. And you were there and you were signing books. I remember you were signing book after book when people were calling in, autographing the books, the phones ringing off the hook. I think they had to bring in some extra phone operators just because of the the response to having you in the studio live, but also for all of the incredible shows and so much more, and everything that you've given. This
You did better than me. I mean, look at you. You look so much younger. And you have no black hair and all that too. I look at you. Really. Maybe I drank too much wine.
That is funny. Why do you love this so much? It's an extraordinary ride. You've been doing this, 7 decades now, and continued blessing and joy that you've given us, and continue for you. We send you continued blessing and joy greetings. Why do you love doing this so much?
Well, as I said, if you love what you're doing, you never have to go to work. And this is basically what happened. I mean, whether pay or not, I never considered money when I cooked and moved from restaurant to one thing or another. I did it because I wanted to do that, and it turned out good. So yes, this is what the secret of life, really. Find something you love to do, and as I say, you never have to go to work.
Absolutely right. How has technology changed the game too on so many different levels?
To a certain extent, but non-stick pan, a few things like that in the kitchen, but otherwise there's still the skillet, you still have your vegetables, so it didn't change that much in the kitchen, frankly. I mean, yeah, in the sense that if you want to have prepared food, there is all kind of, from frozen to all kind of things didn't exist before. But if you really want to cook, the process is still more or less the same.
Do you like doing the videos and the recipe tips and all that you've been doing recently? That's a lot of fun, huh?
Sure, it's fun. It's fun, and as I said, people appreciate it, and sometimes you give them a little pointer, and sometimes it change or it alter the life of people, and in a good way. I mean, usually the pandemic, I'm sure, caused a lot of divorce, but I'm sure it caused a lot of people to move back into the kitchen and start cooking, and forgetting the iPhone, and just cooking with the family and sitting down and discussing the food, and that's a great thing.
What would you say to somebody watching who has followed you for a long time, or maybe they're just considering going into school to study food and cooking and hopefully becoming a chef? What would you say to them? Some inspiration, some encouragement as things have changed greatly on so many different levels.
Yes, I mean, I never went to school to learn cooking. Didn't really exist during my time, but now there is great school, from the CIA to Johnson and Wales, the school in New York. Of course, this is expensive. Usually very expensive. If you can find a chef who will take you as an apprentice, then you may not get paid much, or may not even get paid at all for a while, but then you don't have to pay anything, and you will learn as much or more. Uh, when I have, a young woman or a young man who say, my son is in high school somewhere, and I think you want to be a chef too. What do you think I should do? I said, put him in a restaurant during the summer, during the vacation, as the dishwasher, waiter, any position in the restaurant. And if he survives the summer and he still love it at the end of the year, then you may consider it. But usually, you're going to do that. You work your day off. You work Saturday, Sunday. You work during a holiday. You work hard, and you don't get that much money. Usually, after a summer or so, most people say, "That's it. I tested it. No, that's not what I want to do." But if you still love it, then there is a great deal of joy in bringing people together and cooking for people and giving them that love, that you do when you cook for someone.
Has there been anything about this extraordinary career that has surprised you? If you to look back to when you were 13, 14, 15, all the way up, some of
Of
the
course,
incredible places and journeys and things you've experienced and that
yeah.
you've had the opportunity to share with all of us through the years, uh, the ride has been amazing, hasn't it?
The ride has been amazing. And as I said, now, which is different, when I went into an apprenticeship, we never thought about being famous or whatever, because it
Right.
did not exist. The cook was really in a black hole. Now a lot of young chefs say, I want to be Bobby Flay or whatever, they want to jump on television for that. So it's a different outlook, which did not exist when I was a child. So, but it's a nice, it certainly has been a great life for me. So.
Well, I wish you, my friend, nothing but continued joy and
Thank you.
love and continued blessing in your life. You're surrounded by a beautiful family. You've got a wonderful team who's there supporting you, and you absolutely love what you do. You have fun with it. You're approachable, you're real, you care. You've got that phenomenal foundation. You're still writing. You got all of the incredible things that you do to connect with all of us through food and through your heart and soul, chef. And this was really so wonderful. You and I had just bumped into each other recently at a very important appointment for both of us, and said, hey, love to have you come on, catch up from the last time when we were at the public television studio. And you're so gracious to say, Jim, let's make it happen, put a date together. And I appreciate all of the time and your openness and your kindness as well to join us here on the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And thank you to all your friends and to all my friends there. And happy cooking to everybody.
Happy cooking indeed. You be well. Everybody's going to want to know, what is Jacques Pépin having for dinner tonight?
For dinner tonight, I think I'm going to make myself a hamburger.
Good. That's it. That's Americana for you, right?
I haven't done it for a while.
Good old hamburger. That's it. What a nice glass of wine, I'm sure.
Oh, yes.
Chef, you are a master in so many ways. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you again soon and connecting again soon. And I'd love to, at some point, maybe we can connect. I'd love for coming on our show. I would love to treat you to dinner at one of the restaurants along the shoreline. It would be my honor and pleasure, Chef.
Thank you. With pleasure. Yes. Thank you.
All right. You be well. You take care.
Happy. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. The incomparable master chef extraordinaire, Jacques Pépin, joining us here from his beautiful home along the Connecticut coast, surrounded by the pots and pans. Where else would you expect him to be? What a gracious, gracious person, huh? On so many different levels. This was really something quite special. He and I bumped into each other recently. And again, as I mentioned, I've known him for a long time, but we were at an appointment that I happened to be at and he was at, and we were just chatting. And, we talked about updating one another on different things we were doing. We had a phenomenal conversation, and we put it all together. I thank his team and his staff as well, and his family for their love and support of our show and everything that we're doing here at the Jim Masters Show live series, where we're bringing back the lost art of conversation. I don't call these interviews. I really call these conversations. And if this is the first time you're experiencing the Jim Masters Show live series, we welcome. We love all of you. We appreciate your stopping by the Jim Masters Show live series. Hope to see you on the next episode. Again, we thank the incomparable chef Jacques Pépin for joining us, and we thank you for stopping by as well. Be well. Take care. Love one another. Take care of one another. And cheers.